Welcome, everybody, to a new episode of Cash Flow Positive. I'm your host, Kenny Bedwell, and today we're talking about should you refinance your STR property. Now, for those of you who don't have properties yet, no biggie. You need to learn about refinancing and why it's important. So, since we're talking about refinancing, I wanted to bring in one of the personal lenders that we use from STR Insights, we refer our clients to. This guy has done a ton of loans with us. He's got a lot of experience in this industry, has short-term rentals himself. So without further ado, I brought in Matt Stout from the Green Team. Matt, tell us more about yourself.
Thanks, Kenny. I'm Matt Stout. I'm the STR loan guy. Been a mortgage broker a little over 32 years. Funded close to 4,400 transactions. I come from traditional lending. I'm licensed everywhere to do regular stuff. Between me and my team, we're in 48 states with your regular vanilla Fannie Mae, second home kind of loans. And then I also own a company, Consumers Financial, which has morphed into an STR DSCR lender that focuses just on that, where we have programs that will use all kinds of creative things, including STR Insights data to get people approved, and we close in an LLC and a lot of hybrid solutions and kind of in between. And so really just focused on that because I love that whole thing. As a real estate investor, I've been an investor most of my mortgage career. And I just became really fascinated with investors and their loans and the way they're structuring things because, you learn something new. There's so many ways to make money in real estate, and just watching people do it is how you do it. And, learning from the best, like you guys. So
Yeah.
that's why I'm passionate about it and why I really focus on that. But we do all have all those, other vanilla stuff. And I have people on my team that we all specialize in things, but I mostly focus on just the STRs.
Okay. Yeah, no. And Matt, so everybody listening, we work with Matt a lot. He does a lot of loans for our clients. And one thing I love about Matt is the dude uses our proformas and they work. He gives them to appraisers to help appraise to get, the price that we want for these short-term rentals. Now it doesn't mean we can just put in whatever number we want, but we're showing the data and the appraisers love them. And I mean, and oh, by the way, Matt, you'll love that we just revamped our proforma, added a few extra things as well. It's a little more organized. Cool. And we've got some cool things. I'll have Ben.
I always loved it anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, the performers are great. We try to avoid having to have appraisers collaborate. We actually been hyper focused on investors and programs that don't even make the appraiser collaborate. But when we have to, having that proforma is huge because these appraisers have no clue how to do STR calculations, most of them. And so having your proforma really helps if we do need it. But we do have investors that will actually take your proforma and try and come up with income that works without the appraiser. And that's where we've been using it between that and other tools that we have. So.
Right. Okay, perfect. I love it. Yep. So always, guys, when you're underwriting, it always pays off sometimes to have a really good pro forma. It makes you look more professional and can obviously helps you understand the numbers. Now, Matt, we're not going to talk about pro formas on this one. We're talking about the market. We're talking about refi, but we'll get to refi in a second. I want to talk about the market, what's going on in the market. And you and I were kind of going back and forth, just chatting about, some market predictions and things. Everybody likes to hear predictions. So first off, what the heck, like all of a sudden the Fed is just dropped rates. So why are they dropping rates? And so interest rates are down, everybody, like really, really down, like in the 6s I'm seeing for most loans. Okay. Now, arguably you could say, oh, well, there's stuff in the 5s. I'm talking about for DSCR commercial, for buying short-term rental properties, you're going to get an interest rate in the 6s right now, maybe 7s, like low 7s. Just overall. Okay. Now, if you're using hard money, that could, a variant could be a lot higher. But right now I'm seeing like mid to high 6s to low 7s, depending on the loan type. So Matt, what is going on with the Fed? Why are they dropping interest rates?
Well, let me look at my crystal ball here because at the end of the day, I really have no clue. But
There you
but
go. For those of you who are listening to this while you're driving, Matt literally has it's a picture of a crystal ball. He just held up and showed. I kind of have one right here. I'll just
there you
kind
go.
of stroke. There we go. Tell us
No,
what the future holds. What's going
yeah,
on?
I feel like that machine that's going to spit something out of his mouth, a little piece of paper. But
There you
um,
go.
at the end of the day, there's a lot of smoke and mirrors going on. There always has been. I mean, that's sort of what
Right.
the Fed is. So I'll spare you the speech about that. But at the end of the day, I mean, rates have been elevated for a long time. And you could argue the reasons are everything from de-dollarization going to oil to inflation to you know uh, the massive amounts of money that they've been printing to keep the economy going through the crash in 2006 all the way till just recently with quantitative easing. So uh, you know there's a lot of answers to that, but I think at the end of the day they're lowering because they're finally under enough pressure that they're trying to throw us a bone. And I don't know that it's more than that. I feel like there's still a lot of pressure going on with the tariffs coming and inflationary data that's been coming out. But we've had enough of a break from hyperinflation where we were up in the 20% numbers for inflation post COVID.
Yeah.
And some things still are, but they're not really measuring it. But I feel like they had to do what they did to try and calm that down, and they're finally saying, okay, well, we think we've got it under wraps, and they kind of want us to believe we do, and I hope they do, but that they're really just sort of taking a little bit of a break from this policy they've had because they kind of have to, because I feel like people
They're
they're
going to be
swimming in debt. We
someone's
need
going
to
to
give
hunt
them a
them
break.
down. Yeah. I I do agree. I think it is time. We've had high interest rates since, man, what, 2023 really started kicking off, like higher
Yeah.
interest, like 20, no, not even 2023, 2022. I remember them climbing. I bought a property while they were climbing. And I remember my lender didn't lock in my rate and they waited on the appraisal. And my interest rate literally went from like mid fives to high sevens in the span of a
Wow.
month, or sorry, high sixes in the span of a month. But like it was like a 1.5 difference. I was pretty ticked about that. So, but here we are today. And for those listening, they raise interest rates. And the reason why they do that is for quantitative easing. And that helps with inflation. So when prices are really high at the grocery store, it helps try to build pressure and keep the prices stable or come down. Prices obviously are usually sticky, and so they don't come down, but they stabilize. Hopefully, is the
That's the
goal.
hope. Yeah.
so, so here we are. Prices have, like Matt was saying, we could argue the semantics, but overall, at least in the last 6 months, I feel like they've relatively stayed the same. You look at eggs and milk and gas and all that, and I swear the gas station price is literally like they haven't changed. There's like dust and mold and stuff on the price number because they haven't changed them. Like it's literally the guy put them up there 6 months ago, and it's literally the same as it's always been.
Yeah.
Um,
And that's the idea behind it. And I think you're right. And they have stabilized. Let's hope that they stay stabilized because there's room for them to
yeah,
come down more. And
right.
that's where there's a lot of debate. Because I think not that I'm going for or against any kind of political movements or anything, but I personally think you can't have a 20% tariff without having 20% inflation. And
Mm.
that's a possibility. But who knows? I mean, maybe there's room in the economy to support it and not do that. I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting because, and we don't need to go off on tariffs, but like the economics of tariffs are really fun because I yes, when you add a tariff, you are basically causing, someone's going to have to pay the difference. Now, it won't be the company. And I also believe too, it won't necessarily be the consumer because of price elasticity. Meaning like if it's too expensive, people aren't going to buy it. So
True.
I believe that the burden would be shared, but it depends on the product. Some products where the demand is really high, where it's never going to go away. Like oil and gas, for example, for the most part. Now there's fracking. It's really complicated. We're going way off topic here, but overall, like
and who knows?
most
Because we haven't
items,
really seen it yet, right? It's
yeah,
still to
most
be
items
tested.
like demand will fall. And that's what we're going to end up seeing is like demand falling. And so businesses are going to have to eat that, which could cause unemployment and other negative factors. So I look to see tariffs actually impacting the economy in other ways, in ways that not necessarily like, oh, grocery prices are going to go through the roof. I don't think we will see prices increase over time, which they naturally do anyway, but a little bit higher than normal rate. But you're going to see other economic indicators from tariffs, positive and negative. So anyway, all things to keep an eye on. Moving on, getting back into lending.
If we get inflation, in a nutshell, if inflation doesn't go out of control and if it still maintains the good levels that we've seen the last year, then I think rates will come down more, and that's what we can hope for. And so,
what's interesting. Sorry to cut you off here too, but what's interesting, I want to bring up housing prices because we haven't really seen a huge dip, I should say, in housing prices with the sustained increase in rates over the last 3 years, 2 years, 3 years. Yeah. So I guess it's been 3 years, but yes, some markets have fallen while other ones have actually increased. Overall, it's kind of, once again, we've kind of stabilized, maybe taken a little bit of a dip from some highs, but we really haven't seen housing prices quote unquote crash, right?
Right.
So crystal ball time. All right. And everybody listening, we're speculating here. We're just having a good old conversation of what do we think and what do Matt and Kenny think. Always fun to listen in on these, in my opinion, from the outside perspective, whether you agree or not, whatever. But Matt, your perspective, with interest rates dropping, do you foresee the market changing where you think housing prices will increase now?
Absolutely. That's always been the trend. And pretty good argument of why we won't see interest rates go back into threes. Because I think the Fed is really eating crow, realizing what damage they did to the housing market in some ways by allowing that to happen. So, I mean, you got to remember, I've been doing this since the early '90s when you could buy a house for $120,000. And so watching things now and I mean, literally, no matter how you measure it, things are twice as much as they were. And sometimes in some places even more than that when it comes to housing. So I feel like we are going to see rates go into the fives. We're already kind of there on your regular vanilla mortgages. The predictions are that, and I can tell you this from my own personal mortgage experience as a mortgage guy, that I've got over 1,000 buyers that are just sitting there waiting for that to happen. So what's going to happen? They're going to stampede. Anytime they hear, anything somewhat better that's going to solve their pain, they're going to come out. And I think it's only going to take, 5.5% on the regular mortgage rates, which would mean, 5.9 to 6.1 on your DSCR products to really cause a massive shift in the market, and it would become a seller's market again.
Yeah, that would be nice. I mean, some markets, some properties in markets like Florida have really seen a big dip in the last few years in terms of value. I know I was saying hey, overall, we haven't seen a huge dip, but some markets actually have. Now, they did see a huge ramp up in appreciation, but they're also seeing a huge drop as well. And so I think
it's a great time to buy, man. I mean,
it is. It really is.
The prices are finally down enough. You can negotiate. You can get 10, 20% lower deals, lower prices in some markets than you were. While you wouldn't say that prices have dropped that much, you're seeing enough softening that some people, the people that have to sell, the people going through divorces, the people that just want to get out of town or have passed away or something, those deals are there now. And you won't see that for long.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, when we say the deals are there, obviously that, comes down to the numbers, but the people's willingness to negotiate is a lot higher than it was several years ago. And as you got to think of like people lag behind in trends and what's actually going on. So when we see interest rates falling, we know that housing prices should go up, but it's never going to be like, oh, interest rates are down. Now housing prices are immediately up. It lags behind in the trend. And so if
Mhm.
you're a smart and savvy investor, you're following the trends and making decisions based off what you see live rather than just like, oh, now the housing market's high again and everyone's buying. I should buy as well. That's
Well,
easier
there's
said
my
than done,
crystal
though.
ball
But
prediction. We got another half a point reduction in rate, and I see that happening. That's just
every time we
me.
do that, I stroke the lamp. I stroke the ball. So,
but
yeah,
but but yeah, I mean, and back to your point about refinancing. I mean, should I refinance now? I think a lot of the questions is the why. People have this idea, they hear these rules of thumb, oh, you got to drop your interest rate at least 1%, you got to do all these things. And yeah, those things apply, but you have to ask yourself, why would you refinance? Because there's so many
right.
reasons you should refinance that aren't just to lower your rate. Um, for example, I am literally stirring out of a property right now that I'm doing a refinance on, that I'm pulling out $400,000 in equity to build 2 short-term rentals that are going to do way more revenue than that existing property is. So I'm going to bring that property up to where it's just cash flow break even, pulling out all this equity, and then I'm going to push that into another property that's going to bring 260,000 a year gross income, with that capital that's just sitting dead in that property. That's a really good reason why you should refi. If you have debt equity just sitting in a property and you can somehow, maybe it's making money every month, but think of what you could make with it if you were to leverage it. Don't take it to where it's negative cash flow, but you just bring it to where it breaks even and then redeploy that money somewhere else and still
Yeah,
keep that asset without having to sell it. That would be the best reason why, in my mind, right now, with all the deals out there you could buy.
that's a really good point. Let's dive into that. I do want to take a step back though, and let's start at the very beginning for those, because we have a lot of people who listen to the show who are first time real estate investors. They don't own property yet. They're looking forward to owning their first property. So let's kind of start back at the beginning. A lot of the people listening to this show, they're looking for their first property. They have not a whole lot of experience investing in real estate in general. So what does refinancing mean?
It means a lot of things. So refinancing in a nutshell could be just lowering your interest rate to lower your payment and increase your cash flow on an existing property.
Okay.
Whether it's your primary residence or a property you already own, you can just do what's called a rate and term refinance, which literally just means you're lowering the rate or reducing the term to save
Mhm.
money. And that's a good idea to do anytime you can recover any cost that goes with it within about 3 years. Because remember, the average mortgage only lives about 5 years, and then people refinance or buy or sell or do something else. So if it takes longer than 3 years to get your money back, because there's fees, right? You got to pay the
Yeah.
title company. You might have to pay the points maybe to get the rate down enough to make sense of it. Um, so that's the basic first type of refinance, is just to lower your payment, improve cash flow. But there's other ways too.
Okay.
Um,
So that's good. So to reposition essentially,
mhm.
and maybe that's to get better terms, like you're saying, or so like for example, there are a lot of people who've been doing a lot of arms, where they're doing like a 5-1 or maybe even a 7-1 arm, where basically after 5 years they have a variable interest rate, and
Yeah,
so if you're going to keep the property, you're going to want to refinance out of that variable interest rate when the
for
rates are
sure.
favorable. And so now might actually be a good time for you to refi. And we'll get into the wins in a second, like when you should refi, but just giving people an example there. So you talked about though your experience or what you're planning on doing, which is you had a property you said it was a STR, right? So it was a fixer upper. Is that
Uh, well, I call it that because it's been a remodel. It wasn't so much a fixer upper, but I've owned it a while, and I did some rehabbing to it. I also got it rezoned, so the value more than doubled, because it went from residential to commercial. That's actually what I use as my office right now. but it's an old house, and but it happens to be in a really, really sweet commercial spot. And so just getting it rezoned, more than double the value. And that's one way you can add value. Anytime you're adding value to a property, people call that, the BRRRR method, where you're bringing, something to the property, maybe making it bigger, adding a kitchen or something. So my value add was mostly just the zoning. And now that I've got that equity that's there, I'm pulling that equity out and using it to buy more properties. It actually builds some short-term rentals. So,
and you're tapping into that equity by doing, I'm assuming, a cash out refinance, right? Or refi.
Yeah, I'm just going to take the existing loan that's on it now and increase it by about $460,000, and that's going to allow me to build a $1.4 million cabin. I got a picture I could show you if you want, but it's we're just broke right now. We just got the permits, and builders going out there tomorrow to start digging up.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah,
hey, congratulations. That's big news.
Yeah.
Good for you. That's exciting. I know we've been talking about that property for some time now. So
yeah, it's been a long time coming.
Yeah. That's awesome. Okay. So, you did this cash out refi. Now, why, I'm going to ask maybe just a general question. So don't kill me for this one, but why not just sell the property? You got all this equity in the house. Why not sell the property?
Well, I've done that, and I think some of the only regrets I have in life were selling some properties. Like I can think of one in particular that I bought for $160,000, sold it for $350,000, thought I did good. Sold it to my neighbor, who's a buddy of mine. I refinanced it for him 10 years later, and appraised for $1.2 million. And so, any kind of real estate, if you plug in a future value calculator 10 years from now, you're going to wish you still owned it. And it doesn't mean you should keep them all. And there's definitely people that would tell you redeploy. I kind of believe in a little bit of both. Keep the really, there's properties that are keepers, and then there's ones that aren't, and make those decisions based on the property. But this property that I'm keeping is in an area in Salt Lake City on a commercial part of town that is only blowing up. I mean, they're redeveloping everything. It's definitely a keeper for the next 10 years.
And that was going to be kind of what I was going to say, answer my own question. It's like, look, this property is going to continue to appreciate over time. I don't need to pull out the equity in cash today, and I can redeploy what's already there by doing a refinance, keeping the property, because like you mentioned, and this never gets talked about, is the appreciation and the depreciation of the asset as well, that you can leverage for your tax savings, and then obviously building wealth. I think everybody listening to this will agree, real estate is not a get rich quick scheme. It's a building wealth scheme. Maybe just building wealth. I'll leave it at that. It's not a scheme at all. It's just building wealth, right? And we build wealth over time. And that's where, grandfather time is going to help us out with appreciation, and keeping these assets is how we do that and actually build the wealth. And so instead of just like getting rid of everything, it might actually make sense to refinance it, take that equity that's just been sitting there and turn it into another property that's going to cash flow even more, rather than just selling it and doing that process.
As long as it cash flows, right? I mean, that's what you're listening to, is cash flow positive.
I'm thinking about getting a sign. I thought about getting a sign behind me that says like cash flow positive, but I'm thinking about getting a sign that just says, but does it cash flow?
Right. And exactly. And that's the thing, is that if it cash flows, keep it. Especially if you feel like there's going to be more there. And talk about taxes. I mean, the moment you sell it, you got this time that starts the clock with a 1031. You're stuck with a 1031 on the new property and all these rules that come with it. There's no tax consequence by getting your loan on it. Mm-hmm. And there's even some ways that you could argue
that was going to be my next question.
Avoid taxes But if
Right.
you really keep it and put it in a trust and leave it to your kids and all that stuff. So that's why,
That's a huge one that we don't talk about either with cash out refis is when you cash out refi, Matt, or what are the taxes you pay on that?
nothing, because it's a loan.
Yep.
Now, I might have some consequences if I do sell it later because I've changed a lot of variables that I'm not qualified to honestly answer. I'm not a CPA, but at the end of the day,
Sure.
if you're going to keep it, you have no consequence other than you better make sure you can make that payment.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, and that's something important too. Like when you cash out refi, remember you're getting you're taking money, you're taking equity out, but your loan is increasing, right? So you better be cash flowing on that property to be able to cover what that loan difference is going to be. If not, then it doesn't actually make sense to do the cash out refi. So
Not really, yeah. I mean, yeah, I kind of ran the proforma a dozen ways, and at the end of the day, um, you know, I felt comfortable with the higher payment because it is my office, and so
yeah,
it is
yeah,
costing me about $2,000 a month that I'm not spending now. But I'd go spend that somewhere else on an office anyway, so it didn't really matter at that point. And the value of owning it in 10 years, especially with the Olympics coming in 9 years, I think I'm going to make $1 million just by sitting on it. So
yeah.
why not?
No, that's a really good point. So let's transition from talking about cash out because there are some people sitting on some, like you mentioned, debt equity that could sell or do cash out. But most people bought recently, especially listening to this podcast, they've bought in the last few years. And so they probably have a higher interest rate loan and they're looking at potentially, hey, should I refi? So let's talk about when. Let's get into the wins now. When
Okay.
should someone actually refi and consider doing the refinance, especially if they have a higher interest rate?
Whenever you can lower your payment enough to recover the cost in less than 3 years would be my only generic answer. If you can do it faster than that, it's a no-brainer. If
So
it's
what do you
going
mean?
to
What do
take
you mean with recover the cost? The cost
so
of the refinance?
yeah, the cost of the refinance. So
Okay.
it's a lot easier on a big loan than a little loan. If you have a $700,000 mortgage and you drop the interest rate 1%, you're going to lower that payment over $500 probably.
Mm-hmm.
So at that point, if you times 500 by 36, what do you get? Like
So that's 3 years. So that's
about
okay.
$15,000. So
Yeah.
as long as you pay less than 15 grand, you're going to make that money back, and it's added to your loan. It's not like you have to write a check to refinance usually. I mean, if you have the equity, but you still owe that money on your house, right? So that would be my rule of thumb. But some people would say it needs to be better than that. I mean, back when rates were down in the twos and the threes, everybody was refinancing for free because the rates were so stinking low that we could just raise the interest rate a tiny little bit and you wouldn't pay anything. That's going to be harder to do right now because rates are still pretty high. So the free refis, especially when you're talking about investment properties, it's hard to do a free refi on an investment property because there's still all these, it's not like a loan on your home. You're dealing with a hedge fund. They have all these things that prepayment penalties you have to consider, and so but generally speaking, I mean, that would be my rule of thumb. So in other words, if you're only going to save $100 a month and it's going to cost you $10,000 to do it, don't do it. That's dumb. you know and then you also have to evaluate how long you're going to own the property, because if you're thinking you're going to sell it in 3 years and you're barely going to get your money back in 3 years, that's not smart either.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I think let's kind of break these things down on the win, like just bullet point wise. Like one of the things you shouldn't refi if you're planning on selling your property within the next like 3 years.
Yeah, I think that's
Okay.
fair.
All right. And you probably shouldn't refi your property if it's really not going to make that big of a difference in your payments, monthly payments, because you're going to pay, there's some sort of refinance fee, right?
Well, it depends on where you're at. And that's probably another good point to make. In some states, it's real expensive to refi, and in others it's not, because the title fees are higher. There's deed taxes are higher. So if you're trying to refinance a property in Florida or Pennsylvania or New York, it's going to cost you 3 times as much as it would in the state of Utah or California or some of these places that don't have any of that stuff.
So that's something you should definitely, like, obviously working with a lender like yourself, break down those costs, look at those fees to help you understand like what that's actually going to look like realistically.
For sure.
Okay.
You
Cool.
definitely want to ask all the questions, and not just what are the lender fees, because we do loans without lender fees all the time. But like I said, there's other things depending on where you're located that could make the refinance a lot more expensive than you're thinking. So
Okay. Now, do you have any, I've heard like rules of thumb where it's like, if the percentage, the interest rate's like half a point lower than what you're at, you should go ahead and refi. Do you have any like rules of thumb for that, or other than your
I
other
feel like it all comes down to the cost. Like, the part that people don't talk about
yeah.
is, what does it really cost you? I've refinanced dozens of loans where we only lowered it a half a point for free. It was somebody's house. They owed $1 million on it. We dropped their payment $500 and it didn't cost them a dime, because all we had to do is raise the interest rate. Because that's how where you don't understand, where the consumer isn't that informed, is that we can do loans cheaper by raising the interest rate. But
Mm.
the more I raise the interest rate, the less money you save. So you have to weigh that. Like, always ask the question, what's the rate if I don't want to pay fees? And what's the rate if I want to pay more fees? And then what's the benefit of paying those fees? Because it might be more worth it to pay the fees, especially on a DSCR loan. You might not have a choice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's really good advice. I like that. Most people don't know that. Like, what's the rate without the fees versus like with the fees? In what cases does it make sense for you to not pay the fees? Is that if you're trying to sell quickly, or if you're trying to hold on for a long period of time?
If you're like most people and you don't have a crystal ball like me, you don't know. And so you go for whatever
Yeah.
you don't know is safe, and safe now.
Yeah.
Um, And I always tell people, if you're average, you're going to get a new mortgage in 5 years, because the average mortgage only lives 5 years. So don't do anything that is thinking further ahead than that.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. That's really good. That's good advice, Matt. That's good stuff. Okay. Cool. We learned some stuff here. Well, Matt, as we're kind of like wrapping up here, any other thoughts, anything else you want to add about refinancing in today's environment, today's climate?
I feel like if you're really struggling with a property, it's barely making money as an STR, but you don't want to sell it, or you're planning on waiting for the market, that is another good reason to refinance. Things that, you know, people don't always think about. If it's negative cash flow, or if it's barely breaking even, and you can turn that around with a refi, that might be another reason to justify those closing costs. Um,
Mm.
and something that you don't always think about, or another big thing is, improvements to that property where you could stir out of it. Maybe it's barely a mediocre property, but if you pull that extra 50 grand and add 2 more bedrooms and a barrel sauna, it's going to somehow shoot the rates, the ADR up $100 a night. That would be really worth it to me.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think, and there are a lot of people that have equity. They're just not using it. And it blows my mind day in and day out. I just had a call today with somebody. Hopefully they're not, well, they can listen, whatever. Where I was kind of like, they're like, well, we have, $400,000 in equity. I'm like, cool. How much is the property like making you? And it's doing okay in cash flow, but they're like, we don't know if we want to sell it. And I was like, well, just pull the equity out, whatever the cash flow is doing, like it'll cover the rest. And then obviously like go run your numbers, but I'm pretty sure it could based on what they told me. Take that money and go deploy it into something that's going to cash flow more.
Yeah.
Like, get it to work, And they're like, we don't know where to go and what to do. That's why we're talking to you. And I'm like, okay, that's fair.
Or I've got a 3% mortgage and I don't want to
I
give
know.
that
They're
up. And
just
it's like, who
excuses.
cares if it's 3%? You're
Yeah,
not making any money on it.
right. It's an emotional decision they're making off a logical thing that's an investment. And that's what I simply said. I said, guys, is this an investment? And they said yes. And I said, then you need to go get another property. It's that simple. There's no like, and I'm like, if there is, then it's obviously a lifestyle. It's a personal choice. And oh no, well, we want it purely as an investment. You're not making investment decisions.
No, to that point, I mean, my example, my office that I'm pulling this money out of, I've got a 1% SBA second mortgage that I only owe 90 grand on it. And the first mortgage is at 4%. I think I only owe like 200 on it. And that's why I've been waiting all these years and thinking, I shouldn't do anything with that. It's going to be paid for, blah, 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 blah. But when I redeploy that money, I'm actually going to bring in 10 grand a month net that I'm not bringing in today. And then it's like a no brainer. It's like, wow, $460,000 redeployed could mean $10,000 a month in my pocket.
Right.
Who cares if I'm going to pay a higher rate?
Right.
Who cares if I don't have that 1% mortgage anymore?
Smart, man. Yep. That's true. I love it. Well, Matt, as we're kind of wrapping up here, if people are interested in talking to you about potentially refining their properties or just getting a loan in general, what's the best way they can get in touch with you?
If you go to the strloanguy.com, it'll take you straight into my calendar. You can also watch examples of what I do approving STR properties on my YouTube channel, which is also at STR Loan Guy.
It's literally a video of him. It's like a GoPro camera of him like at his office, like filling out paperwork. So if you want to see, approved.
Yeah,
just kidding.
That's awesome.
No, Matt. I've seen the videos, guys. It's really good. Actually, go check him out because what he does is he actually breaks down the properties. He shows you the properties and the process and everything. Really helpful for you who are wanting to understand the lending side and what happens behind the scenes. Definitely encourage you guys to go check that out. So.
Thanks, man. And if you've ever talked to me and can't tell by now, I just want people to win. I will spend as much time as it takes, talking to people, even if it's just to give them some advice. I'm not here to talk you into anything. So you can book a consultation with me there and see for yourself. But wish you all the best of success and building generational wealth. I mean, that's what this is all about.
For sure. Thank you, Matt. And thank you so much for being on the show. And we will see everyone on the next episode of Cash Flow Positive.
Awesome. Thanks, Kenny. Thanks for having me.